Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special episode of the Drop Lod Pod. I am your host, Nathan. We are missing our usual co-host, Edik, today. He has a lot of work or something. He thinks he's too important for this, but fear not for you guys. I found a better replacement, one of his old tennis partners, a former coach at the USTA National Campus, former Division I tennis player as well at Rider University, and one of Coach Edik's and my good personal friends, uh, Ben Tauber. Welcome on the pod, Ben.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nathan.
You excited to talk some tennis today? Australian Open just finished. Edik came out firing last week with plenty of hot takes. I know we're maybe not going to get as hot today, but I know you bring a lot of analytical background. So you ready to talk about these matches? There were some great ones.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. So, I mean, getting right into it, man. I'm sure you saw, even if you slept through it, semifinals after an Australian Open that I argued was one of the most boring I'd ever seen. It was very favorite heavy on the men's and women's side. I'm a big
hmm
upset guy. Edik likes the favorites, but I guess I'll ask you real quick before we get into it. When you watch a major or a tournament in general, do you prefer to see the favorites win, or you prefer to see a lot of upsets in the draw?
I think I prefer like a little bit of variety. Like I feel like those are the ones that I do end up remembering the most like growing up. I think I probably started playing tennis like 2009, 2010. Like Del Potro had just beaten Federer at the US Open in like an insane match. And then from
Yeah.
then on, there's just been a string of years where it was just basically Federer a little bit, but then Nadal and Djokovic and sometimes Murray. And I remember when Wawrinka finally beat Nadal, like Cilic winning that US Open, like things like that happening. Like, so I would prefer
Yeah,
like.
Yeah, and I definitely agree. I think the parody's awesome, and I think to prove our point, massive upset, and it's crazy to say the words massive upset followed by Novak Djokovic in the same sentence, but massive upset by Novak Djokovic taking out Jannik Sinner. He lost
Yeah.
five in a row to him. It was a big statement point that people don't lose five in a row, or Novak doesn't lose five in a row to opponents. I had made the statement that I felt like they played pretty similar games, which we'll get into in a second. And I felt like Yannick, just in terms of age, in terms of ball striking power, had him dead to rights, so to speak. Went up 3-0 early on. Novak opened at 8.5 to, or he was like, you bet 100 on him, you return $950, massive underdog, and got even bigger because he lost the first set at age 38, playing against a guy that a lot of people expected to be number one in the world coming into this year, coming off the success at the U.S. Open, or well, Carlos got the U.S. Mm, bad podcast host I am, not remembering which one got the U.S. Open. You'll clear me up on that, but Yannick coming into this season looking like the clear number one. Um, went 2 for 18 on break points against Novak Djokovic in the match. 0 for 8 on break points in the fifth set,
Yeah.
compared to Novak's 1 for 1, broke him from down 40-15 at 3-3. Um, is this a case of Novak just being clutched, or is this a case of Yannick choking, or somewhere in between? Because with all those opportunities, man.
I think it's both, to be honest. I saw what happened and I saw people talking about it, how they said like I had to turn off, the TV after he missed so many break points. So I would have to see like what happened on those points exactly. But like I think a little bit of both, right? Like I think like in my opinion, Sinner doesn't look like somebody that like gets that nervous, so to speak. But like, we saw, him kind of screw up the whole thing with Alcaraz at the French Open one year.
Yeah,
And then,
3-5, love 40, triple match point in the fourth set, doesn't win.
yeah, so exactly. So even though he kind of has the, correct look about him in terms of like how he kind of projects himself and to say like, oh, I'm not nervous or whatever, like those are like two like really big like where most let's say, evenly matched people would just that would have been it. That would have been the match, right? So
Yeah,
I
and
think and also Djokovic just being Djokovic and having the belief that like doesn't matter how many break points he has. Like I'm Djokovic. Like I've won
yeah,
this, however many times. I'm probably gonna win it again. That sort of thing.
I would
So
say that I did get to see some of that set, and the stats really didn't back up his clutchness because he was serving a lot like T, a lot outside. They weren't quite getting past Sinner just because he doesn't have that zip at age 38, and Sinner's a very, dynamic mover, but he's always had good placement on his serve. I think all of the big three back in the day had really good placement on their serve. Maybe none of them were serve bots, so to speak. But yeah, he was placing the serve really well. Obviously, Yannick crumbling a little bit. And I could also add the US Open back in 2021 or 2022, where he had match point against Carlos in the fourth set and failed to win that match as well. Yannick also with a losing record all time in five setters. I believe the number I got was 6-11 in five
Mhm.
setters versus Carlos being 15-1 in five setters. Um, on the other hand, talking about Yannick being kind of unclutch, and it was a really big tournament for narratives because Carlos Alcaraz in the semifinals took a two-set lead against Alex Zverev. Obviously, Zverev very notorious, and if you do keep up with our podcast week to week, you know how much Edik despises Alexander Zverev's presence in the top three, five, or even 100. Feels that he's incredibly unclutch and undeserving of his spot. Not a future major winner, but Zverev served incredibly all tournament. The first serve was huge. He's a tall guy. He's like 6'6". Bombed his first serve accurately in big clutch moments. He was coming up with it down break point consistently. Um, was down two sets to Alcaraz. Alcaraz starts facing cramps, wins a tiebreaker in the third set. Love 30 in the fourth set. He's almost out of it. He holds. He wins that tiebreaker as well. Alcaraz looks to be on the ropes. He grabs the break in the fifth set. He's up 5-3. He was served for at 5-4. I was awake for that match at like 4:30 a.m. And it just felt like I never had to believe he was going to hold that service game. And I feel like that's a dual testament to Alcaraz being the most clutch player of this generation and Zverev being the least. Um, how hard do you think it's going to be for Zverev? And I'm sure this is a very common question, but how hard do you think it would be for him to get over the mental hurdle at this point? And do you think it hurts more for him seeing that Novak would have been his opponent in that finals and not Yannick?
I mean, to be honest, I don't know how much it would have hurt him. I mean, I do think that he maybe would have had a little bit of a better chance against Djokovic, honestly, just because of the whole age thing, one extra match for him to play, right? But yeah, I think it's gonna take like a maybe extremely dominant win or week or couple weeks from Zverev, maybe it's a few tournaments back to back to get over the hurdle because I mean, I think the biggest thing was like, he had a whole double fault thing going on for like quite a while. Like, he still double faults quite a bit, but then I think from like, I don't know, maybe 2018 to 2022, I felt like it was
Yeah, him
quite a
and
lot for somebody his level.
Him
And
and
then,
Sabalenka, actually, two players that used to have very glaring double fault issues that were keeping them, and they both fixed it up relatively
yeah,
well. Yeah, I mean, he bombed like 20 aces, I believe, in the match before that. Bombed a lot of aces in this match against Alcaraz as well. But yeah, it's just like he's serving up 5-4. And once again, Carlos is Carlos. You always have that feeling that he's going to make one extra ball when the moment is the biggest, when the table when the odds are against him. Words were
right.
just eluding me there. I watched like a compilation of his top five comebacks and included a double match point down to Deminor at a clay tournament, down a set in 5-6 in a tiebreaker against Novak at Wimbledon as a 20-year-old, down match point against Yannick, down triple match point against Yannick, both in finals, and down to Zverev 5-3. So Alcaraz already with an impressive resume of big time comebacks against big time players and big time moments. Um, and he really just came up with the goods. Like Zverev pushed one approach shot wide, but when he hit the approach at 5-6 and it was out, Carlos just absolutely nuked the forehand right back down the line at his feet. Like it's not an easy shot to hit. People don't understand how the difficulty of the shots that Alcaraz makes look easy. Centered too, and even still Djokovic. But yeah, is he a top five most clutch player of all time already?
You're saying Alcaraz?
Alcaraz at age 22 with seven majors and a career Grand Slam to his name. Is he a top five most clutch tennis player in the history of tennis?
I would say he's probably straddling. Like he's on the cusp, I think. I mean, I think, after the whole like let's say Nadal, Djokovic, Federer, Murray, like super era, so to speak.
But are
I
we
think
calling Federer clutch? I think Federer had some moments where like
yeah,
that double match point against Djokovic at Wimbledon, he had one time where he didn't win and a couple other moments like that. Like I
yeah.
I think Novak showed even at age 38 with his back against the wall against center, with the 2 for 18 break points. I think he showed at the Olympics against Carlos Alcaraz in the final, another match on clay he wasn't expected to win. He played what Edik described last podcast as treeing out of his mind. Incredible tennis. Just I hadn't seen anything like that out of him in years. So I think
Yeah.
Novak's proved the clutchness. I think Rafa's known for the never give up mentality. Um, and I mean, Federer, Rafa, Novak, like they're all on that pedestal at this point. I think Novak's probably achieved greatest of all time definitively. I think that this probably cements him as the true goat of tennis, and that's as a guy that's an Nadal fan. Would you agree with that? That this we'll change topics real quick. That this cements him as the goat.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that look, like growing up, I would definitely have said like Federer was my favorite player just in terms of like the smoothness. It's just like I feel like what you would think of when you're thinking of like somebody who's extremely capable, talented, good role model, like
Yeah,
whatever.
and
But
you
I
have a
think it is
one-hander.
like undeniable statistically,
It's
like
Novak.
Djokovic, like yeah, he's been doing well the longest, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
longevity, accolades, success in multiple generations. Like, I mean, he had one major at age 24. He's got 24 at age 38. Like, I mean, Alcaraz could surpass, even Sinner's on track to surpass. But I mean, once again, maintaining that longevity is insanely difficult. And he was, as a guy that will bet on tennis from time to time, he was an odds-on favorite to win the Australian Open final in that match at age
Mhm.
38, regardless of whether or not he got it done. That statement just saying Novak Djokovic was a favorite to win the 2025 Australian Open finals. If you told me 5 years ago that was a thing, I would have just been like, did everybody quit playing tennis? Like nobody tried anymore. Like, I don't know. I just wouldn't have believed that an entire
Yeah.
generation of people grew up trying to play and no one could beat Novak Djokovic still.
Yeah, no, it's totally insane. And I think that in a sport like tennis, like for instance, like I was telling you before I came on this podcast that I'm like super hurt and
Yeah.
I'm like, playing 2 or 3 hours like a day, like when I was really playing before I got hurt. Like this guy is playing insane amount of matches and told like the I think like one of the biggest tolls on your body that you could put on in sport without it being like a physical
Contact sport,
contact
yeah.
sport. Yeah, right. So, for instance, I was just like, first thing that came up on Instagram the other day was like a reel of him playing 2005 and it was like I don't think people understand like, I'm
Yeah,
teaching kids like
2005.
yeah, 2000. I'm teaching kids who were born like in 20, 18 right now. Like, and you see like him hitting in 2005. He was hitting clean back then. The video feed was like pretty terrible, and like people have like tried as hard as they can, and quit like within the time frame that he's been like
Yeah.
vying for grand slams like that.
He's
Seriously, like
he's
it's an
he's
insane
uh
amount.
he's got like the LeBron James longevity. Like he could have if he had a kid at the right time, he could have had a kid playing professional tennis against him already. That would have been a
100%.
storyline for the ages as
Yeah,
well. But
yeah, 100% though. Yeah.
but that being said, Carlos comes in, takes care of the business Yannick couldn't.
Mm.
Does Novak have a chance at winning another major? Like I know that there's going to be so much argument that he showed life that I just said that he was the odds-on favorite. I still don't think he can win another one. I think it's just the combination of Sinner and Alcaraz, one of them will provide too much problems for him at any point in time.
Yeah, I would say it's statistically like very low, and I would say that like the chance, the pure chance that Djokovic ended up winning that center match was already like low,
It
and
was like
then
4% live at one point, according to odds makers. So
yeah, exactly. Like I wouldn't know about that like in terms of the percentages and how they calculate it or whatever, but like I just know like yeah, both of them together unless both of them are hurt, and like Zverev also for some reason like is just
I think he handicaps himself pretty decently. I mean,
yeah in certain
I've
moments.
also, to be fair, I have to give credit to one of my good friends in the tennis Twitter space that I frequent often, who's a huge Musetti fan. Musetti was up 2 sets to 0 on Novak. I'm not a big Musetti believer. A fellow one-handed backhander like you. Um,
Mm.
Also, for those of you that don't know, Ben has a great one-handed backhand. He's a righty. He leans on his backhand more. I lean heavily on my forehand, so I can't understand how a tennis player leans on their backhand so much as a righty. But Musetti, pretty similar with that one-hander. Uh, Goes up 2 sets of 0, forced to retire. A storyline that kind of got minimized with the way the tournament played out. But do you think he's also just a threat to Novak in the future, trying to get past that hurdle?
Yeah, I mean, I do think like, he's definitely like a could be a problem for Novak in my opinion. Like I know somebody like, Edik's probably saying, "Oh no, like he's not past it yet. He hasn't proved anything yet." And like, look, I totally agree with that, but like, at no point, especially in sports, was okay, well, this happened in the past. That means that this is going to happen in the future 100%, especially when it
We'd all
comes
be
down to
rich.
people that are still young.
We'd all be rich
Um,
if that was the case.
Right. So exactly. So, there's a reason that these things happen, and in all honesty, they are inevitable that somebody new steps up. I do think like, and like what you said before too, the me favoring the backhand, like if anybody is
Heavily.
watching this podcast that knew me growing up, they're like, no, that's insane. It was the other way around when I played him when he was a kid, which is true. Then I favor the backhand. Now I would say I'm like pretty even, and it was definitely an adaptation. And I think like Musetti is pretty even in my opinion. I mean, I think that like the backhand is definitely an X factor, and I do think that that gives him a little bit of variety. Like we have a few players, like Medvedev or like you know let me say Manarino or
RIP Manarino, dude. He's lost 8 straight matches.
yeah.
He's looking on the
So
down and
maybe
out. It's very sad.
yeah, exactly. And so maybe not so much him anymore, but like Nori is somebody I think about where there's something weird going on. There's
Their
just
form.
something that it's not like very accounted for, for most people they're playing up against. And
Unorthodox form.
exactly. And Musetti's like, for instance, it's not unorthodox form by any means, but like having a one-hander, I think at this
Yes,
point is kind of rare,
I think,
right?
yeah, the game is people have argued, and it's something that you might be able to break down better than me. And I've heard like players say it's just like the game's become way more baseline heavy in the last like 5 years or so, maybe even 10. So like
Mhm.
most of the players, like you don't see serve and volleyers too often anymore. You don't see players that heavily rely on the slice. Like there are a lot of players that play a relatively similar style of tennis. And obviously if you're on tour and you're playing all these matches, it's going to become common that these players are getting acquainted with playing against certain styles. So yeah, like when they find people like Manarino hits a very flat ball, pretty much every pro hits with a good amount of topspin. He
Mhm.
had a shoulder injury when he was younger, isn't able to do that. Cam Nori kind of punches through his backhand. It's like he doesn't hit that with very much topspin, very flat backhand, topspin heavy forehand. And then you have Musetti, who just I honestly can't explain it because when I watch him, I feel like it just doesn't feel that threatening, but I'm clearly biased because a lot of people see it differently. He obviously gets a lot of arc and a lot of depth on the backhand, and then he can whip the forehand. He's got a good pinpoint serve that he can place pretty well, and he's solid at the net. So like I can understand where he gains the strength. I just don't feel like he has like that top level to just really go full takeover in a big match against a big opponent. Um,
Yeah,
Me personally.
yeah, I could see that, and I think another like big part of that, honestly, like in terms of like I don't want to say like the death of the one-hander, but obviously seeing it not as prevalent, I think does have to do with like the court conditions and the balls and stuff like that. Like I talked to my friend that does the pro shop at where I work all the time, like about like recently how we can like I know for instance like from when I was a kid, my forehand was so much more like Western and extreme than it is now. And I felt like
Uh,
as a kid, I used to be able to get so many weird errors like from the other side just because my ball was getting so high. And that happens sometimes now, but the balls are like in my opinion, they're definitely more not like dead, but they're slower. And then
yeah,
like
they don't
the
bounce as crazy for sure.
yeah.
Also, real
And
quick, because you actually provide usefulness in this category as a legitimate tennis coach. Could
mm,
you explain what a Western grip means? Because honestly, even I arguably
mm.
don't know too well as a guy that just always kind of grips the tennis racket and rips the ball. But I think our viewers could enjoy like a 30-second like little breakdown on what you mean by that grip. You don't have
Yeah,
to have
exactly.
it on you, but
So I mean there's honestly, I mean I could show, I mean I have my phone here, like
yeah,
it's kind of hard to explain. Like there's different ways that people say, oh, there's different bevels of the like bevel one, two, three, and they try to explain it
yeah,
or whatever.
yeah,
I would say in general, like if this is, my racket right here and my hand is more like, let's say, on top of the racket,
yeah,
and when I'm at contact, I don't want to say my hand is or my arm is straightening up a little bit more, but it's getting to the point where, let's say my arm is straightening out at
yeah,
contact for sure through the swing, like somebody like Alcaraz.
yeah.
He may not be all the way over it at an Eastern grip, but he's somebody that I would explain is as Eastern as I think it's going to get. Like you have people like Yaron, you have people like Rinky, like Hijikata, and then you have people like Roberto Batista Agut who like really they hit very flat, and that is usually the grip they're going to have when they're hitting
And
a ball like
and
that.
flat
And
is
then,
Eastern, correct?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it has to do more with the swing path, right? So like you could have an Eastern grip and hit spin. You could have a Western grip and hit like flat, technically speaking. But I would say that Eastern is, and I think most coaches would agree, if you have an Eastern grip, you're just the way the swing path is going to naturally go, you're probably going to hit a little bit more flat than somebody who is, has a Western grip. But I'm trying to say that in the most like non-definitive way possible. If I have a
I get what you're
Western
saying.
grip like this, my hand is going to be slightly, like around the underside of the grip, and
Yeah,
my arm is going to be like a little bit more bent. So somebody that is playing with like a somewhat more Western grip than Carlos Alcaraz is Yannick Sinner, and you could see like him, like I may be mistaken, but I think if he's really that Western, he's not going to have a straight arm at any point during the swing. Like maybe on some weird on the rise ball where he's taking it above his shoulder.
yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong, but to me that looks like bent most of the time.
Yeah, no,
So
he hits with more topspin. He kind of like well, that's
he,
Alcaraz, but yeah,
yeah,
I know what you're saying.
exact,
He gets
yeah,
he gets a lot of topspin. He gets a lot of topspin on every shot, but he's still getting part of I think what makes Yannick Sinner so effective is that he hits with that topspin, but he still gets the ball deep and like crushes it. As a lot of the
mm,
guys that'll hit with that topspin, they kind of sacrifice like the how far they can hit the ball because it's just harder to make a ball go hard when you're also hitting under and making it spin. But Sinner
yeah,
kind of has that ability to like very compact hit through it, make it spin, and land close to
yeah,
the baseline. But
yeah,
I think
exactly.
that also because that's part of what makes him so effective is the depth that he gets on his shots while also hitting with spin. It seems
Hmm.
to kind of be what hinders him in these five setters because he's getting a little tired. And when I watch like even that fifth set and he's getting these points, but he's not getting the ball super deep into the court on these big points because he might be a little bit tired. Maybe he gets a little bit injured. Like I don't know. I'm not in his body, so I can't say what struggles he
Right.
has. But I do notice that like for Zverev, I know it's very mental when he sacrifices the depth on his shots.
Hmm.
Novak, part of what makes him good is that he'll go for lines, he'll go for deep shots in the court, even on those clutch points, and he just doesn't get nerves. He trusts that they're going in.
Right.
Um, and yeah, Alcaraz, I'd say maybe actually he does do that, but he really even relies on just the fact that he's so insanely athletic that he will make you put him away 3 times at any of those big points. But yeah, Sinner just doesn't put it deep into the court
Yeah.
in those big moments.
Yeah.
Um
And exactly. And oh, sorry.
no no
Say
go ahead.
something. Yeah, so I
Go
was
ahead.
gonna say I have my own ideas. Like I agree with exactly what you're saying. With the two things I just wanted to say was like I do feel like, with the one hander and like the balls being dead, like in the professional level, like ATP level, the courts are a little bit slower, right? So I think
Yeah.
that, I don't want to say everything gets like nerfed, but I'm saying whether you hit flat or with spin or whatever, like it's clear they're trying to like incentivize point
Longer rallies.
construction.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. So, whether somebody does that flat or with spin, I think, there's different ideas whether, somebody can be more consistent one way than the other. Most people would say with spin. And
Yeah.
and I think as a one-hander, I don't know any one-hander, that's not a serve bot that doesn't have like insane footwork. So I do think that to catch the ball at the right height through the strike zone as a one-hander is just more difficult. Like I don't think it's impossible. So I do think somebody could be like, let's say a future number one with a one-hander. I think it's definitely possible. But of course, like there's not as many people using the one-hander. Statistically, most likely the number one in the world is going to be two-handed, right? And then I think,
Yeah.
as what you're saying with Sinner, I do think that, the only reason I say this is because I'm one of those people where he is by far the skinniest person that is at that level right now. Like I don't think people are like aware of that. If you look up like height and weight, like
Yeah.
I am not as skinny as Yannick Sinner, and I have like a ton of trouble putting on weight. Like if I'm trying to build muscle or something. So I don't know. Like I don't want to say how it's not affected him before, but like where I think, in my opinion, and maybe I'm wrong, but just like from
No,
like
dude,
studies
don't doubt
I've read
yourself.
and
Say it with your chest. I'm enjoying your takes. I think you're providing very interesting insight because Edik and I have gotten off the rails a couple times. I'm enjoying the analytical. I'm sure the people watching are going to enjoy the analysis as well. So say it with your chest. Go for it.
yeah, I mean, I just think that like I think when you are, let's say, that skinny, and again, I think I'm allowed to say this because I'm skinny and I could feel it. Like if you are going consistently long matches for that amount of days in a row, like for that amount of time, like I don't want to say it's going to catch up with you, but you just don't have as much energy in the tank. There's certain
Yeah.
supplements you could take. There's certain things you could do with your nutrition.
Supplements. Yannick, you accusing him of something?
No, I'm just saying like there's a bunch of
I'm
things that
kidding. I'm
like
kidding.
people clearly use, right? Like that like certain multivitamins and fish oil and like magnesium and creatine especially and protein and like there's just a bunch of things that you could do to make sure that you're not like just getting totally sapped out there, and I don't want to say I'm surprised that he's been able to do it before, but like in Australia it's their summer right now. Like I'm not
Yes.
surprised that he's tired after multiple like
Yeah.
long points and long matches, if that makes sense, especially with the slower balls.
No,
So,
I get that. And the slower balls and stuff, if anybody ever really wants to read into it, Zverev had an interview. I know he can, and Edik would probably claim that he was just being like salty, as people would say. Like he was just kind of being bitter about it and making an excuse because he's not winning. But he made a big claim that after COVID, like the balls had gotten slower, the courts had gotten slower. There was some notes of like ball companies maybe making a little bit cheaper production to save money after COVID. I can't
uh,
completely speak to the validity behind that, but I'd seen multiple reports on that. Real quick, I will back your claim. Novak Djokovic, 6'2", 181 pounds. Carlos Alcaraz, 6 foot, 163 pounds. Yannick Sinner, 6'3", 170 pounds.
yeah,
I'm
and I
6'1"
just
and a half. I weigh like 195, almost 200. And
mhm.
I'm like, nobody has ever walked up to me and been like, you weigh too much, even when I feel like it. So for him to weigh less than me, being taller, like that honestly, like that is crazy. Absolutely. I mean, it
Yeah, I just
shows the necessity of being skinny because all three of those guys, relatively speaking, would be considered skinny, and they're all
mhm.
obviously in phenomenal shape. Like tennis really requires you to have like the coordination of like a baseball type sport, be in the like cardio shape of like a runner, and yeah, like have the physicality of and the strength of other sports. It really does test all the elements for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I can personally say too, I mean, maybe somebody can like fact check it, or next time you have like a podcast, you may be able to say yes or no on this. But I've walked past Yannick Sinner before. I'm almost 6'2". Like he's more than 6'3", and like I feel like he has to be. So he's probably taller. I'm sure he's like 6'4" ish
I
around,
believe
or
it.
taller.
I think that athletes definitely undersell the height, and he has very long arms and very
Yeah,
long legs, so he
he
definitely gives that perception of being tall.
exactly. And
He's built for tennis, obviously, but yeah, I mean, so with all this being said, all this going down, is Carlos clearly the number one in the world right now? Like he's got center cleared for the moment? I think yes.
I would say, the next few months, like we'll see, to be honest. Like before this tournament even started, I just said like I think Sinner's gonna win. Like I just
Me
think
too.
in my opinion, I just think like I don't want to say that Sinner's better from like the ground strokes or from the baseline, but like I'm pretty sure Alcaraz was yelling at his team one time and said, like again, somebody might have to,
No, no, I
you
know
gotta
where you're
see if it's
going with this
correct.
because I saw this. This was last year at Wimbledon where they were playing, and he was just like, I can't out hit him from the baseline. Like he
Yeah.
yelled it to his box. It happened.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he said, I swear he's so much better than me on the baseline. Like he said
Huh?
that, like I don't
Yeah.
know verbatim because I don't speak Spanish, but
It,
that's what it said. And it's one of those things where if you say it like in a moment like that, I don't know how you're turning that around and then like outplaying Sinner. But I think in that situation, I can't remember if he did or he didn't, or if he was
He
just letting his
didn't. So
emotions
he
out.
had
But
just won the French Open. Everyone was confident that he was going to win Wimbledon, and by everyone I mean me, and that was what mattered to me. He had just saved the 3-5 love 40 in the fourth set, arguably the greatest comeback of all time in tennis, even more arguably one of the greatest comebacks of all time in sports history. Goes into Wimbledon, splits the first two sets, loses the first, wins the second, looks like he has all the momentum, and then Sinner just beat him down.
yeah.
And yeah, it was discouraging. And then he did come back and get the U.S. Open. So
Hmm.
they I've said multiple times at this point, I do run a page with tennis where I give out tennis predictions, and I always tell the people I refuse to predict matches between Carlos and Yannick, and I'm going to add Novak in at this point. There is just a certain level of greatness where anything can happen, and they've both achieved that level of greatness. I do think that just given Alcaraz's resume in five setters, given the head to head, given the more majors, the younger age, I have to give him the number one right now, not to mention the fact that he quite literally owns number one, even if that was due to Sinner getting suspended, the legitimacy of which we'll never know completely. But yeah, Alcaraz has got to be my number one right now. And then leaving the rest of them behind. But I do want to ask you a couple other questions. We'll get off of the major topic for a second. Um, Also, did you watch, and this is more of just a general statement to tennis, did you watch doubles this year at all in the Australian Open? Or are you a double
Um,
watcher when majors come around, or are you more of a singles only watcher?
no, so I actually like weirdly enough do try to find like the highlight reels after they happen. I actually don't like, I have trouble, of course, I'm sure everybody else does as well, but like finding those matches televised. But yeah,
Yeah.
like I know like certain players and I've actually like remember a few of them growing up, like when they obviously like weren't professionals and stuff. And I kind of want to see how they do. I want to see how they play. There's some pretty weird, strokes and strategies that people get away with in doubles, like more than people would think. So I actually like just seeing how it works,
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. So yeah, I would say I watch it when I can,
Yeah.
but it's hard to find.
No, and I mean that was a complaint that had been going on around the community. I think it's with all sports. It's just like TV contracts are huge these days. Streaming services are plentiful. I happen to be lucky to have like Hulu Live TV. It picks up an ESPN Plus package, which came with a bunch of different add-ons for ESPN. So I was lucky enough to have the matches televised. But I saw people that couldn't find some singles matches, some doubles. You had to have like four different add-on packages. It is obviously disappointing in general because I think we're both obviously huge tennis fans and base our
Hmm.
lives and kind of careers around tennis. So you want people to be able to access and watch the sport as much as possible. You might have some knowledge into this, but the finals were won by Christian Harrison and Neil
Yeah.
Skupski.
Hmm.
Christian Harrison paired up with American Evan King last year. They were both like good doubles players. They hadn't really been at the top of the game. They had a great season together, took home multiple titles, made it to the ATP World Finals, kind of surprisingly split this year, and it seems to have worked out for Harrison because they just steamrolled their way to a tournament win. Actually, a lot of upsets in the doubles side, ironically, for people that enjoyed parity. The number one seeds went on in the first round to the Cerundolo brothers, Francisco and Juan Manuel, who were
Hmm.
Djokovic level underdogs. Botic van de Zandschulp and Talon Griekspoor took out the two seeds in the first round. Maybe it was vice versa, but the draw was pretty open from the beginning. These guys strolled through the finals, only facing one seeded team, by the way. Faced
Yeah.
five unseeded teams, including all countrymen pairings of just guys that hadn't played together consistently. Jason Kubler actually was in the finals of that tournament as well for people that follow doubles. Him and Rinky Hijikata, fellow Australian, had won the Australian Open doubles a couple years ago. He made it back with Australian Mark Palmans, who literally was posting on TikTok in the first round saying that if he got enough likes, he would hit a tweener against Kyrgios and Kokkinakis because he didn't believe they could win. They came back from down 4-1 in the first match in the first set, made it all the way to the finals, almost won. So there's
Yeah.
definitely some interesting parity on the doubles side. And then unfortunately, Siniakova, the most dominant, I discussed this with Edik last time, women's singles or doubles player, I believe almost of all time outside of Venus and Serena, definitely in today's game. Her and Taylor Townsend fell in the quarterfinals. Shui Zhang and Elise Mertens took that home. They're the number 4 team. And then I admittedly did not watch mixed doubles this year. It was taken home by a couple of Australians. But yeah, that only leaves the women's side. And we will leave some deeper analysis because Edik and I will be doing an episode later this week. And Edik is a huge double WTA head. But Elena Rybakina taking home her second major in pretty dominant fashion, barely dropping a set. Was pretty clean before the finals. Plays Arena Sabalenka. They've had a close head-to-head all time, and she wins the first set, loses the second, goes down 3-0 in the third, and wins at 6-4. Um, I saw an Andy Roddick's podcast this week that he said that Rybakina has a top 3 to 4 serve all time on the WTA. Uh, and I think it's hard to have found really big, consistent servers in WTA history. But as a guy that's seen more tennis in the past than I have, would you agree or disagree with Roddick's statement on that? Obviously, we're putting Serena at the undisputed one in this argument.
I'm not gonna lie, you cut out for like a good 10 seconds when you're making his statement. So I didn't hear his
I
statement, but
apologize. I
good.
apologize. Is my bad. It's my internet's bad. But Elena Rybakina,
Mhm.
top 3 to 4 server all time on the WTA tour. Agree or disagree?
Honestly, I'm not gonna lie. I like growing up, since I'm a guy, like to see who I should emulate, I would follow the guys just because that's like where it is most applicable, like my game.
Yeah.
So I don't know enough about the women's side right now to answer that question specifically about the servers. I know who's good
No,
right
no,
now and that sort
no,
of
that's
thing,
okay. Because you know
but
what? We got plenty to leave to Edik later this week as well. And I think that he
yeah.
would be pretty disappointed if I took away his bread and butter, the WTA. But as a guy that's watched a little bit, I would say what I can speak on definitively as a guy that's watched pretty consistently since 2020 is that Elena Rybakina has had the best serve on the WTA tour since
Hmm.
2020. Ash Barty was pretty close, but obviously just Rybakina has more height. She's shown some inconsistencies, but I will narrow it down more and say she has the best first serve I've seen since Serena Williams.
Yeah.
Just at her height with the flatness, she can take it tee, she can take it out wide. It is a match changer, it's a tournament changer when she has it going for her. Just getting that hold rate up, something that's not very high in the WTA compared to the ATP. Getting that hold rate closer to ATP levels, just makes all the difference. On the other end, Arena Sabalenka has lost 2 majors to Coco Gauff in the third set. Now adds another loss to Rybakina. She was up a break against Coco one time. She was up a break against Rybakina. Sabalenka, pretty definitively the most talented player on the women's tour at this point.
Hmm.
Iga probably still lands in that top three. Rybakina making a real push towards Iga, definitely not past Iga, still owning more majors and just yeah, so as I was saying about yeah, Sabalenka, definitely the most dominant. The number two is pretty up for grabs. Um, I think that there's more parity in women's tennis right now than there is in men's tennis, which is quite interesting and something that really hasn't been the case for the majority of the last like 15, 20 years as long as I've been watching. And also Sabalenka might have a little problem with being clutch down the stretch. So it's definitely something to watch out for. Um, would you agree that there's more parity in the women's game than the men's game right now?
Yeah, there I would say there's definitely let's say some clear outliers in the top, 3 or 4 people on the men's side versus the women, right? I think that, let's say Sabalenka, I think at this point, even though if the clutch factor is or is not, a problem, you still got a good amount of people. I mean, that could be vying for those top spots in those situations.
Yeah, Rybakina can get there. Coco Gauff is still in contention despite some ugly tennis from time to time. Iga is obviously still pretty clearly up there in the top two, three. Anna Samova has established herself as a threat. Svitolina maybe can't get all the way to the top, but has definitely established herself as there. Paolini's kind of fallen off, had a little bit of a struggle, but she did make 2 Grand Slam finals in a row in the past couple years. Got Edik will kill me for this one, but technically speaking, Mira Andreeva is still working her way in that direction right now. So Jess Pegula, also another one that makes it deep in tournaments often, was in the semifinals here. It's been a couple slam finals, so plenty of names that are all people that you could arguably expect to make it up to the top. And I think that the parity definitely, for me at least personally, makes it a lot more fun to watch. Um, that's really all the storylines from the Australian Open. We've surely covered them in enough depth. We're gonna end with some drop or lob real quick, and I will tell everyone Ben will be back, so we'll get more into it with him. He's got some other special talents, some other insights that we definitely look forward to sharing in the future. Maybe when he's a little more prepared to come on, doesn't look like he's about to go rob a bank. But for now, let's hit some drop or lob. You know how it works, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen you guys like do it once
Sir.
before, I believe. Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask you questions. I'm gonna ask you if you're dropping or lobbing it. You're gonna drop it if you're not a fan. You're gonna lob it if you are a fan.
Okay.
So first question, drop or lob. You would beat Edik in a tennis match right now if fully healthy.
Yeah, fully healthy. I would say lob. Two big reasons.
Okay.
Three big reasons. First big reason, it's Edik. So like I have to say lob in this situation. Second reason is it's just gonna be because like last time I played him, and he could attest to this
You
in
guys have
Florida.
played, by the way, plenty of matches
Yeah,
before. I should
yeah, yeah,
back
yeah.
up and say that Ben and Edik were hitting partners for a while at USTA. They would go play multiple times a week, even a lot of the time. So yeah,
Yeah, we played quite a bit, and that is kind of like in part my second reason, like why I'm saying that is he knows me playing a certain way, and when I lived in Florida, my forehand was bad, was
it
not good.
was. I
Like
can second
it,
that. I played
yeah, it
against
was
it.
bad. Like I was hitting it a certain way growing up. 2021, I broke my wrist, couldn't emulate it, and like was having so many like things going on with it, just like basic things that I couldn't do. Now I could do those basic things and it's like pretty even with my backhand most of the time. So I think that first time we play, he would just be like surprised, so to speak. Like he's not used to playing me like that. So you'd have to
Yeah.
change a little bit. And third, just like if you ask me if I could beat this person and they're my level, I'm always going to say yes. Just because like if I say no, like I feel like there's no point. I don't know. But
I understand that. Number two, and we went in depth on this earlier. Uh, Drop or lob, the one-hander, and you actually used the statement yourself. The one-hander in tennis is dead when Stan Wawrinka retires.
no, I would say, hard to prove, but I would say okay, so I would say drop. I would say that it will be like alive to a certain extent, of course, and people will continue to use it. Just statistically, it's not going to be taught as much. The way that it is taught, I think, of course, matters, especially like in terms of like game styles, like what type of surface those people grow up playing on. But I will say, like just in my own personal experience, like when I play somebody that is of equal level, I'm hitting the backhand better than them most of the time. So I would say that there's like no really real reason at that professional level why it should be dying other than I will say the return. I don't think people another thing that I don't think people understand all the time, if you don't have a one-hander is if you have a two-handed backhand, it's very easy as opposed to a one-hander to switch in the correct grip to hit the ball. Like if the ball comes very quickly and you have a two-handed backhand, you just put a second hand on the racket or you may already be in the correct grip and then you go to that side to hit that backhand or you take the left hand off to hit the forehand. It's very easy to return with the two-handed backhand. But on a one-handed backhand, I have to find the grip and hit very quickly, especially on the first serve, unless I'm just trying to slice it back. I think Musetti does that well. I think that's why that he's like kind of like, a one-off along with Dimitrov because they're both able to like figure that out. But the days where I am not doing that well, it is not good. And if I'm
Dimitrov.
doing it well, it's very good. So like I think it depends. If I'm playing a ground stroke game without serves, I
Not gonna lie, man. I really messed up. Dimitrov slipped my mind as a tennis player with how much he's been out. But yeah, his
yeah.
one-hander is also phenomenal. Definitely keeps it going. Hope to see him back out healthy. I'm not sure how much longer he's willing to continue to torture himself trying to be healthy just to get injured weeks later every time. But yeah,
Yeah.
dude that was up 2 sets on center last year. Also should probably prove that being up 2 sets on center or Alcaraz, Djokovic, whatever in a major doesn't automatically mean you're gonna have a good season, Musetti. But anyway, drop or lob. As a guy that's worked in a lot of multi-racket sport facilities, drop or lob, pickleball, and padel being able to rise to the level of popularity that tennis has hit or anywhere close.
Mm, I would say,
You can single one of the two out if you'd like as well.
yeah, I would say I'm trying to think of your exact statement. I would say lob. Like it could definitely get close for certain demographics, 100%. In certain countries, I would say that is like very close to being the case, especially with padel. In South America, Latin America, maybe some countries in Europe, right?
Spain, probably.
Um, and in pickleball, like obviously, like obviously the older demographic, like it's maybe more popular than tennis right now in certain locations in the United States. So, is it ever going to be fully as popular as tennis? Hard to say. I would say in certain realms, yes, it definitely can be and probably is. So,
I'm gonna go with a very disappointing yes. I'm still a big tennis truther personally. Um,
mhm.
and last question, as someone that you played college up north, you're up north right now, but you got to be down here training and playing for a couple years. Drop or lob that tennis in Florida is the best tennis in the United States, and I will double that down and say drop or lob, it's the best place to train for tennis in the world.
I would say that is a tough question because growing up, like,
That's what we do here. We're a tough
yeah,
Christian factory.
exactly. Like growing up, it's one of those things where um, I
Uh,
always wanted to like snowed. I was like depressed because like my family's very academic, so I was only playing once or twice a week if it wasn't for indoor courts, right? Or
yeah.
the good weather or whatever. I would say I'm sorry, your first question was, is it the best place in the United States to train?
Yes.
Okay.
And just for
I
competition, level of competition. And we're starting to lose Ben
I
right
would say level. I'll answer that first. I would say lob.
there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would say lob, and I would say best place to train in the United States. I would say drop. More like for an inconclusive reason. In terms of competition, I think it is basically impossible to refute that in terms of density, the amount of players in certain like metro areas, like let's say you live in a town up north that has like a lot of tennis players, and then the town's not that big. Okay, maybe you're gonna have a high density of tennis players, of course. But I'm saying like you drive to Orlando, you drive to Miami, you drive to Fort Lauderdale, you drive to Tampa, you drive to Jacksonville. Anywhere you go, there's going to be an absurd amount of tennis players. And even if you grew up as like a 10, 10, 11 UTR, something like that, like me, like there's a good chance you're going to move into your neighborhood. You are not the best player on your block. Like it's possible, which is really weird to say. But like I would say competition wise, that is why, like, if you look up, the amount of, even if you just go on UTR, quick search, 50-mile radius of Miami or Tampa, by UTR, like the amount of players there is insane. It's insane. So I would say in terms of competition, it's kind of hard to refute. Maybe Southern California. I'm not sure. I haven't lived there, but I would say to train, I think it does come down to connections. Like when I moved down to Florida myself, and I have lived in North Carolina a little bit as well in a strong tennis area of Raleigh. I when I could play, you know, it was good, but it's really hard to find, the connections that you had growing up. As soon as I moved back here, and Edik was actually the same way. He started playing better when he moved back as well, just because I think he has the connections. I have the connections, any time of the day, any day I want to hit, like I have the people. I have let's say the facilities. Me and him both have ways we could either hit a place where he grew up or where we work or whatever. And I think it really comes down to like your situation. And that's why we see, a lot of people, let's say, that even graduate from like a place like Ohio State or Virginia. Like, I don't know if it happens as much anymore, but they go back there while they're on the futures tour to just train there just because they have the connections with those places, right? So I would say it comes more down to that. I would say I'm playing way better than I actually was playing in Florida and North Carolina. Of course, maybe that's because I'm farther into my career and I like
Yeah,
know how
you're
much is
just
too much
coaching a
work.
lot too.
Yeah, exactly. But like I'm way better than I was in Florida, 100%. I wish I was playing this well when I was living in Florida, if that makes sense. But
No,
yeah,
that's
the
fair.
competition there is very good. So
Yeah, I think we see a lot of pros come here to train against the Heat. I think that the Heat's probably hard to find for a lot of people in other places, but
exactly.
just depends on
Hmm.
what elements you want to weather. We also just because we have the Heat, like we have the access to the clay, the access to the hard courts. Very, very limited, but one or two grass courts around the state as well. So the national
Yeah,
campus has some red clay only available to like some of the best players in the world. It's not for like public, but if you're really at that level where they can take you in the player development program, or you can get into like Bollettieri Academy down like Bradenton, ING, whatever, like there are definitely some opportunities that have just developed over time in Florida. And yeah, as you said, just the amount of like semi-major cities and because of the weather, it's a sport that a lot of people get into. Um, Definitely a good place to train. But once again, as I said to everyone, Ben will be back, giving us very good analysis, very professional takes. And for those of you that want to see Edik go off the rails again, uh, this week, Tuesday or Wednesday, I believe, when he's finally too not too busy big dogging his co-host, we will let him just speak his mind. And I'm sure that'll be a good time as well. But Ben, great having you on. We'll definitely have you back on in the future. Also, just to close off for those that don't know, so yeah, Ben was Edik's tennis partner for a while. He was also Coach Charlie, one of our multiple time co-hosts, old roommate, and very close friends. So he's got a lot of connections to the podcast, a lot of great advice and interesting insights. A knower of every country's flag as well, something I told him that I would save for another time, but we'll definitely maybe once we're better with graphics have to run a little test for him. But thanks for coming on, Ben. Any closing statements for you?
no, that's it. Like, thank you guys for having me, and
Yeah.
looking forward to the next time being on.
Yeah, good luck robbing a bank. And have a great day, bro.
Thanks, you too, man.